Hello, once again I'm showing you in Photoshop what is desirable to have in Affinity Photo. It could not be exactly the same, but it should be at least as easy, as efficient, as fast, and as simple as it is in Photoshop. And I think it could be even be made simpler. Well, I'm going to do is to create a mask out of this elephant. I'm not going to create the whole mask to keep this video short, but I'm going to show you the techniques that are usually used to create alpha maps. The best type of alpha map is based on the information that is already on the image. If we would create the alpha by painting with a brush, it would be a very soft and artificial mask. So we try to use what is already there. I chose this image because, well, it has some problems. There are some places where the luminosity of the background and even the color is very similar to the subject in the foreground, like in here, for example, and even in some places here where the luminosity is almost the same. So to start creating a mask from this, we will see which channels are more contrasty. So red, not bad, some contrast. Green, even better. Blue, not as good as red and green, because the background and the subject are almost the same levels, except for some places here, but here it's not as good. So red and green, let me combine these, just calculations. Red, green, and instead of multiply I want to increase the contrast, so I'm going to use one of these. Usually I use overlay, it increases the contrast. Okay, here it is. So I can already isolate, create what is called in video a garbage matte. So I just want to keep this, invert the mask, and now delete. Okay, I will end up with something that it's black and white. The silhouette of the elephant will become white. So I may have to invert this at the very end. But for now, what I can easily do, first thing, usually blur it once. And I'm going to use the tools dodge, burn. Sometimes I'm going to blur locally, and sometimes to help out I'm going to use the brush. The fastest way, of course, is to switch tools by using the keyboard. First thing first, burn tool, making sure that it's the shadows, and I'm going to increase the exposure a little bit to make it faster. Okay. In here it's not as easy because there are a few highlights, so I can blur a bit and then darken it. In here probably I will use the brush. I'm not going to create a complete mask here. I want to show you the places where we will have some problems. So the burn tool still works here. But in here, of course, I will probably need to use the brush. I don't need to completely blacken out this. I just have to make it darker than the background, so that I can now use the burn tool. Okay. Now there's one big problem here. In here we had the subject that was darker than the background. In here it's the opposite. The background is darker than the foreground, the subject on the foreground. So, switching tools to lasso tool, and I can do that until around here, because here it gets back to being darker again on the foreground. So now just hit Command I to make it to invert the image, levels to increase the contrast. Okay, deselect, and now just the problem areas, I just use the brush to even this out a bit, and here to create a limit. Okay, so once again our burn tool, just going to blur this a bit, blur once more. I'm blurring because I'm blending dark pixels with light pixels so that I get gray instead of lighter values, so that I can just darken the grays. Okay, here it is. Nice mask. And now much easier. I would do this the same for down here, but now, like I said, I'm not going to do the whole mask. And of course now I have to create high contrast, so I just switch tools to dodge, I just want to keep the eyelashes. Here it is. Trying to keep some anti-aliasing on the edges. I would do the same here. I will not do it now. And let's just, okay. I would do, of course, this whole thing with the legs. Finally, I think there's a little bit of a problem here, so I'll just paint this, and when I get this limit well defined, just lasso this and lasso this, adding the lasso. Well, this would finish the mask, and finally, if this was all done, I would just invert the whole thing, and we had a very good mask with the limits that are quite irregular, just like we need. I can still adjust a little further here, here, and finally here. And now this is very important. When we have an alpha, we should be able to load the content of the alpha as a selection. So in Photoshop we just press Command and click this. We have now a selection, and now a selection, and now we get back to the composite. That's another thing that we need in Affinity, Affinity Photo. We don't. If we only have red, green, blue and alpha, it's quite hard to get the whole composite. So we need to have a composite to just click it and everything gets active again. And now change this to layer, and finally we have a very good mask. This is the usual procedure for creating masks. So, in recap, what we need: a way to get, let me just turn this off, have access to all the masks, all the channels in an easy way, being able to combine them to create a new channel, being able to access just the alpha channel and paint it, and then get back to a selection that we use as a mask. Please, we need to have this way of creating masks. It's what compositors and everyone that uses Photoshop professionally needs to create lots and lots of masks. So please make this work in an easy, fast, efficient way, okay? So thank you.